So let's talk about Çatalhöyük. It's one of the most incredible archaeological sites on the planet. And for a long, long time, we thought we knew its story. But it turns out the story we were all told, it might be totally wrong. Let's dig in and find out what's really going on. I mean, just look at this place. We're talking about a 9,000-year-old settlement. It's this huge, sprawling, well, they call it a proto-city, right in modern-day Turkey. It's one of the very first large communities we've ever found. And the story that put it on the map? Yeah, that might be a complete work of fiction. Okay, so what is it that makes this place so bizarre, so different? Well, for one thing, and this is a big one, this huge settlement was built with absolutely no streets. None. Yeah, the technical term for it is a proto-city. And get this, it was around for almost 2,000 years, starting way back around 7,500 BC. Think about that. It was a huge, dense community, but it was made up of just houses. No palaces for kings, no big fancy temples, no government buildings that we can find. And the way it was built is just wild. The houses are all packed in together, literally like a honeycomb. There are no footpaths, no streets, no alleys. The whole city is basically one giant interconnected building. So how on earth did anyone get around? Well, the answer is they went up. The rooftops became the city square, the main street, the public plaza. To get home after a long day, you'd have to climb a ladder up to the roof level, walk across a few of your neighbors' roofs, and then drop down into your own house through a hatch in the ceiling. Can you imagine that commute? It just shows you how fundamentally different their way of life was. But as strange as that city layout is, it's not even the most radical thing about this place. Nope. The first story that came out about its culture, that was what really blew people's minds. Okay, so let's introduce the guy who started it all, James Millart. Back in the 1960s, he was the first archaeologist to really dig in. And his work was incredible, truly groundbreaking. He peeled back 18 layers of settlement and found all this amazing art. And from that art, he came up with a massive theory, that Çatalhöyük was a matriarchal society run by women who all worshipped a single, all-powerful mother goddess. And this little statue, this was his star piece of evidence. This is the famous seated woman of Çatalhöyük. It was found in a grain bin, which is pretty significant. Millart saw this and said, this is it. This is the mother goddess. He believed she was a powerful deity sitting on a throne flanked by leopards, protecting the food, ensuring the harvest. And boy, did that idea take off. She became this huge icon for a kind of peaceful, female-led prehistoric world. So Millart's whole argument really boiled down to one thing. He kept finding all these female figurines, way more than any male ones. For him, the math was simple. It had to mean this was a female-dominated culture. And that story stuck. For decades, that was just what everyone knew about Çatalhöyük. But then, things changed. After a long break, archaeologists came back to the site, and this time they had new technology, new methods, and, most importantly, new questions. And a very, very different story started to come out. So what happened was, Millart was eventually banned from digging in Turkey for complicated reasons. So the site just sat there, untouched for almost 30 years. Then, in 1993, a new archaeologist named Ian Hodder came in. He brought a whole new team and a ton of modern scientific techniques to re-examine everything. And what they uncovered? Well, it changed the whole picture. And this, right here, is where that old story really starts to fall apart. See, Millart found about 200 figurines in his digs, which is a lot, but Hodder's team, working for over 20 years with much more careful methods, they found 2,000. But it wasn't just about the numbers. The real shocker was what these new figurines actually were. Okay, get ready for this, because this is the bombshell. Of those 2,000 figurines they found, a whopping 95% of them were animals. And the female figures? Less than 5%. The evidence that Millart built his whole theory on, it wasn't there in the larger data set. The whole idea of a dominant mother goddess cult just evaporated. And you don't have to take my word for it. Here's a quote from the man himself, Ian Hodder, saying it straight up. He says, their work shows very little evidence for a mother goddess or a matriarchy. The science just doesn't back it up. So, if that story's wrong, what's the right story? What was this society actually like? All right, so if we put the whole mother goddess myth on the shelf for a minute, What we're left with is a picture that's way more detailed and honestly, way more fascinating. So it seems like life there was split into two separate worlds. You had your private life inside the house. The walls were all nicely plastered. It was where you ate, slept, and kind of creepily buried your ancestors right under the floor. But then you'd climb that ladder and you were in the public world. The rooftops were where everything happened. It was the bustling social heart of the city. And here's what's truly mind-blowing. All the evidence points to a society that was incredibly equal. There are no palaces, no huge temples. All the houses are pretty much the same size and layout. When scientists analyzed the skeletons, they found men and women ate the same diets, which suggests equal access to food. Their social status seems to have been equal. Even in their burial rituals, the same number of male and female skulls got special ceremonial treatment. And the art? It tells the same story. Once you start looking, you realize it's not all about female figures. The walls are covered in paintings of wild, dangerous animals. We're talking huge wild bulls called aurochs, stags, and lots of hunting scenes. Vultures, too. It seems like their focus was on the raw power and the danger of the natural world around them, not on a single comforting goddess. So, okay, what's the big deal? Why does it matter that we had the story wrong for so long? What do we actually learn from this huge shift in understanding? Well, let's just break it down. The old story was this beautiful, romantic idea of a female-led utopia. The new story, the one backed up by all this new data, shows us something way more complex, and in my opinion, way more radical. It shows us that a huge, dense city full of people managed to live together for centuries without any evidence of kings or queens, with men and women on equal footing. Now that's a story. You know, what this all really teaches us is that the past isn't some static thing that's set in stone. It's a story that we're constantly retelling. And as we get better tools and learn to ask better questions, that story can change completely. I mean, think about it. The entire accepted history of one of humanity's first cities got completely flipped on its head just because someone decided to take a second, closer look. It really makes you wonder, right? What other big stories about our history are we taking for granted that might be just as wrong?